Well, it was a sort of quiet weekend to close out the official visits in June, but not without its noteworthy developments and news items and maybe even a little bit of fireworks, although not always the kind of fireworks that you want to see. Definitely a lot to talk about, though, so we're going to break it all down right here on the Morning Pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, let's get the week started here on the Morning Pit. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website. It's right there below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. That's the website with the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and of course, message boards to interact with other Pitt fans. Hundreds and thousands of Pitt fans all day, every day, talking about Pitt sports on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Go check it out. If you are a Pitt fan, you want to talk to other Pitt fans, that's the place to do it. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. We need a little jingle we can sing to talk about it each day. And of course, the YouTube channel here, you know what we ask you to do. Like this video and subscribe. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com so you never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content. We put out a decent amount of stuff here, not the least of which is these daily Morning Pitt videos. You don't want to miss any of it, so subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, let's get into the final official visit weekend. It's the final week of June now, and Pitt just wrapped up their final official visit weekend of the month. Another big one, they had, I think, 11 visitors on campus. We thought there might be 10. At one point, we thought there were going to be 11. I mean, actually, at one point, we thought there was going to be like 14 or 15. Started narrowing names down last week as a few guys committed to other schools. A few guys just had their visits canceled. And then just a couple other changes to the visit list as the week went on. One change, and we didn't talk about him here on the Morning Pit late last week as we were previewing the official visit weekend because we didn't really know. We kind of thought that he might not be on the official visit, so we sort of left him out of the conversation. But it was quarterback Henry Hasselbeck. And Henry Hasselbeck, one of Pitt's primary quarterback targets, was set to come in on an official visit, canceled that visit, or in his words, postponed it. Didn't really get into details about why, but all the momentum seems to be behind Michigan State with Henry Hasselbeck, so that could be an indication of why he did not make his official visit to Pitt this past weekend. Could leave the Panthers scrambling when it comes to quarterbacks, particularly as Trevor Jackson, their other top target, appears to have taken an official visit to Texas A&M over the weekend. Why a quarterback would take an official visit to Texas A&M, I don't know. They've already got two quarterbacks committed, so unless Texas A&M is looking to drop one of those two, either four-star, I think his name's Anthony Maddox, or three-star Miles O'Neill, who was a Pitt target and just committed a couple weeks ago, unless A&M's going to drop one of them, I can't imagine them taking a third quarterback, so I don't really know what Trevor Jackson's angle is there, what A&M's angle is with Trevor Jackson. We'll have to keep an eye on that situation, but if you see one of A&M's quarterbacks decommitting or announcing that he's no longer on the commitment list, then it might be time to raise the red flags on Trevor Jackson. We'll continue monitoring the quarterback situation. We talked about it a lot last week and the week before and the week before that, and we'll probably keep talking about it throughout the summer until the situation is resolved, but let's be honest, it's quarterback recruiting. It's never really resolved, so it's going to take a little time with that one. But otherwise, the visit list largely stayed intact. There were 10 guys we expected. Those 10 arrived. They had another official visitor, Sire Torrance, a wide receiver from Syracuse, took an official visit to Pitt on Friday. Just a one-day official visit. He was at Boston College before that, stopped in at Pitt for 1 day of an official visit, and then left. He came out of the visit seemingly... from everything we heard, kind of down to Pitt and Michigan State, those seem to be the main priorities. But he told me he was going to go on vacation for a week or so and then come back and make his commitment after that. Well, he decided not to do that. On Sunday, he just committed to Michigan State. So that's one wide receiver target who popped up on the radar and then is gone on the radar. Just floated away, you know? Here today, gone tomorrow. And did you even notice one way or the other? There's more to talk about with wide receivers, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. And I don't mean to start off with all the bad news of Henry Hasselbeck canceling his visit and Sire Torrance not committing to Pitt or popping in for 1 day and then committing to Michigan State. But there was one commitment that came out of the weekend. Not quite the numbers that we are not quite the numbers that Pitt saw out of the first two official visit weekends, and quite frankly, not the numbers that we expected out of this official visit weekend. Thought it would produce maybe 2 or 3 commitments. They end up getting 1. As of Sunday night, that commitment had not been publicly announced. I think everyone's assumption is Sincere Edwards, the 4-star defensive end from Florida. I think we were sort of predicting that and expecting that last week and the week before, and even for quite a while, even while he was still committed to UCF. He backed off that commitment to Central Florida the day before his Pitt official visit. And then there's a commitment that happens on Saturday. We sort of expected him to commit while he was here. He hasn't announced it, but we're sort of running with the assumption that that's who it is, which obviously would be a great get for Pitt, another 4-star player in the class, a 4-star defensive lineman. It's hard to turn down the opportunity to play for Charlie Partridge, and we think that Sincere Edwards probably decided he wanted to go forward and do that. So we'll keep an eye out for his announcement. Like I said, that would be a good addition to the class. On Friday in the 3-2-1 column, I predicted that Pitt would sign 6 4-star prospects in this class. They've got a few already, and Edwards would make another one, start building up toward that number of 6. Now, one of the other 4-star prospects who is committed in this class is Rickdarius Farmer, Day Farmer, a 4-star wide receiver from Florida who committed to Pitt on Christmas. We've talked about him a bunch, and we've talked about him primarily because he took other official visits this month. He took an official visit to West Virginia, and he took an official visit to Central Florida before coming to Pitt this past weekend for his final official visit of the month. Now, what we've said all along is that ever since Farmer committed on Christmas Day, it felt like his commitment was at least a little bit tenuous, and would probably be one to watch over, the course of the next year, basically until signing day this coming December. He took a bunch of unofficial visits, and then took the 2 official visits, like I say, to West Virginia and Central Florida before he came to Pitt. Now, he came out of the official visit to Pitt talking, he told Jim Hammett, I'm sticking with Pitt. Said the Pitt coaches didn't mind him taking those visits because they knew his commitment was strong. So he's saying all the right things about standing pat with Pitt and being solid in that commitment, but I kind of look at it like there's still 6 months to go until signing day. I don't have a lot. I don't want to say I don't have a lot of optimism about Pitt holding on to Day Farmer, but when you kind of approach it the way he has approached it over the last 6 months, it kind of makes it feel like, are you in or are you out? And I kind of said last week that I thought with Day Farmer there would be a road to Damascus moment. Are you in or are you out? What is it? You need to make a call. And it doesn't. I don't know if it was really all that stern. I think the conversations were obviously had, but I would put it this way: when Eric Ingerson, the tight end commit from Nebraska, visited Pitt in the first weekend of the month, and he had a Nebraska official visit scheduled for later in the month, I said, that guy's probably gone. And he went to the Pitt official visit, and he came out of the visit saying, you know what? No, he's set with Pitt. He canceled the Nebraska visit. He's locked in with the Panthers. And I felt like that was secure. I felt like Ingerson really was locked in. I'm not sure I feel quite as confident about Farmer at this point. Now, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in the next few months. I think it'll be easy for him to maintain his commitment through the summer, if that's what he's inclined to do. When he gets to the fall, is he going to start going to games again? You know what I mean? Is he going to go to Central Florida games? Is he going to go to West Virginia games or FAU games or Marshall games? What? Let's see where he goes and let's see what he does. And if he, if he just sits at home the whole time, or maybe he comes up to Pittsburgh for a few games, and that's it, doesn't go out visiting all over the place, okay, then maybe he sticks. But until then, we'll have to see. This weekend saw something happen that I gotta say, I don't think we're going to forget anytime soon. Certainly one of the more unique situations I can recall. On Thursday, I think it was. Let me get the date right. on, I believe it was Thursday, Chasen Johnson, the cornerback from Florida who was committed to Pitt to the 23rd. It was Friday, actually. It was Friday. He announced that he was decommitting from Pitt. And he decommitted from Pitt, and, I don't know if I saw it coming or not. Johnson, I guess we should start with that bit of news. So Pitt lost a commitment, right? They lost a commitment in Chasen Johnson, this defensive back from Florida. Pitt had a lot of defensive backs committed, partially because they wanted to reload the numbers, partially because they wanted to reload the numbers and you knew that there was going to be a decommitment or two. They probably still have a couple of guys lined up that they're going to land, but you knew somebody would probably go. And Johnson probably... He actually wasn't number one on my list of defensive backs that I thought might back off of the commitment. I thought he was probably number two. And we actually wrote about number one on that list last week on Panther-Lair.com. If you didn't see it, kind of made some predictions that they might lose another DB from this class. Although at that point I thought that would be the first DB they lost, and it ended up being that Chasen Johnson was the first DB they lost from the class. But Johnson, even when he committed on his official visit, one of the biggest reasons he gave for his commitment was that everybody else was committing, and he wanted to be a part of that. And that's good. It's exciting to be, with your brothers. It's exciting to be, part of a group, and you see the other recruits committing, and you want to join them because you really like those guys. You want to be, but you need to have more of a tie to the school. There needs to be more than just that. It's got to be about the coaches and the development and the facilities and the campus life and the environment and all of those. It can't just be because on that Saturday morning, a lot of other guys were committing too. And I'm not saying that was the only reason he committed to Pitt, but when that was one of the primary things he mentioned, it did kind of stand out. And you say, are you really in? Well, it turns out he wasn't. He took an official visit to Central Florida last weekend. And then, like I say, on Friday, tweeted his decommitment from Pitt. And a little while later, tweeted his commitment to Central Florida. Not entirely atypical, not unusual. I wouldn't be surprised if Central Florida, I think there might have been some shakiness to his commitment to begin with, and I wouldn't be surprised if Central Florida was able to offer a little enticement. It's recruiting, right? And this is what you do. So not entirely surprising, not entirely out of the ordinary. What was out of the ordinary, though, is what happened after Chasen Johnson tweeted his decommitment. What happened was linebacker prospect DJ McCormick, himself a Central Florida commitment, quote tweeted Chasen Johnson and said, come join us or something like that. Not entirely atypical to have a recruit tweet at another recruit and say, hey, come and be part of this. Come join me at the school I'm committed to. Kind of a normal thing, right? Except DJ McCormick was visiting Pitt when he tweeted that. He was in Pittsburgh. DJ McCormick, the linebacker prospect, was taking an official visit to Pitt and got on social media and encouraged a Pitt decommitment to come join him at Central Florida. That's a new one. That's one we're probably going to look back on for years and say, do you remember that? Because we still mention different, wild recruiting situations. And this is not crazy, but it's pretty unique, I would say, to have a guy sitting, maybe he was sitting in Ryan Manilak's office, or he was in a team meeting, or was with the life skills people, or somewhere around Pitt's campus, somewhere on Pitt's facilities. Maybe he was sitting in a nationality room or something like that, tweeting, hey, Pitt decommitment. Hey, guy who's no longer going to Pitt, come join me at Central Florida. That's a new one. That I can't say I've seen a situation like that before. Now, maybe some of those conversations have happened in private. Maybe the guy's off on the side texting. We've heard stories about, oh, yeah, that kid, he took a visit down there, but he was texting our staff the whole time. We've heard those stories, but not quite anything like this where they've done it publicly on Twitter and drawn that much attention. Now, do not think that those tweets went unnoticed, or that tweet went unnoticed in the South Side. I think Pitt was very well aware of what DJ McCormick tweeted. I think he was probably spoken to about that tweet in who knows what kind of terms and tone. I believe that tweet has been taken down, which might speak to how that conversation went. Here's the other part of it too. I think DJ McCormick likes Pitt a lot. I think Pitt had a really good chance of landing DJ McCormick, except on Thursday, and we talked about this last Friday, on Thursday, Jeremiah Marcelin announced his commitment. Now, he had been committed since the first weekend of the month, but he hadn't announced it publicly. He announced it publicly last Thursday, giving Pitt 3 linebackers in the class, which effectively filled their linebacker quota for the 2024 recruiting class. So DJ McCormick comes in on an official visit. Later that day, the quota is sort of formally and publicly filled. They don't really have room for him to commit even if he wanted to. Does that lead him to sending a tweet at Chasen Johnson? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if Pitt's situation with linebackers was explained to McCormick by that point or not. I would guess that it was. I would guess that there was some conversation at some point of, hey, we really like you, but we're full right now. We can't take you. We do want to keep building this relationship and hopefully have an opportunity down the road. I have to assume a conversation like that happened, and maybe that's a precursor to DJ McCormick effectively, I don't want to say trashing, but recruiting against the school that's hosting him for an official visit. Either way, we're not going to forget that one anytime soon. That was a unique situation. McCormick left Pitt as a Central Florida commit. Did not back off that commitment. I do think that if Pitt wanted McCormick, or had room for McCormick, I should say, I think they probably would have been able to get him, but they didn't have the room. So he they didn't send him home earlier. They didn't kick him out or anything like that. He stayed Thursday to Saturday, flew home Saturday morning, and continues to be a Central Florida commitment. Just like he arrived, so too he departed. And the last thing I guess I would look at with this official visit weekend, we're not going to talk about every guy who visited, but the 2 offensive linemen are pretty notable. Maurice Schmoranzer, and I apologize if I mispronounced Maurice's name, Mo Schmo, as he calls himself, offensive tackle from Germany originally. He lives in Roanoke, Virginia now. And Ryan Howerton, 4-star offensive tackle prospect at St. Vincent Pallotti in Maryland. Those 2 offensive linemen were on campus for official visits this weekend, and they both spoke pretty highly about their visit. We know Pitt has 4 offensive line commitments right now. I think they want 1 more. They told Mo Schmo that they wanted 1 more. And I presume they told Ryan Howerton that as well, though when Maurice Schmoranzer tweeted out that he's going to be committing on Friday, I think it is, on the 30th. He's got a top 4, I think, of Pitt, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Miami. And Howerton retweeted that and said, I think they had both taken official visits to Pitt and Virginia Tech, or Pitt and West Virginia, whatever. But Howerton was like, are we going to be a package deal or something like that? So obviously the 2 bonded to some extent on the Pitt official visit. Would Pitt take both of those guys? 6 is a lot of offensive linemen, but those are 2 pretty good prospects and 2 guys that are pretty high on Pitt's board. Is it first come, first serve? I don't know. Not entirely sure what's going to happen there. I can't really predict either one of those offensive linemen just yet. I'm not entirely. I think Pitt impressed both of them. I think they both had really good visits. I think both left with very high impressions of Pitt. But I don't have a great feel for how they're going to do with those guys. Like I say, Mo Schmo will announce his commitment on Friday. Howerton, I guess, is going to commit sometime in July, but keep it quiet until August 28th, which is like his first day of school or something like that. So we'll know a little bit about one of them soon, and then we'll find out about the other later in the month. I'm looking at the official visit list real quick. I forget if they have other offensive line targets who visit. Like I say, they've already got 4 commitments. Scrolling down here, they already have 4 commitments from offensive linemen, and the only other one who visited was Jaden LaFontant, who committed to Kentucky last week. And so they've gotten, they've had their 4 commitments have visited. 2 of them were not committed when they visited, Caleb Holmes and Mason Lindsay. They both committed after their visits. And then they've got these two guys, Mo Schmo and Ryan Howerton, who have their visit at the end of the month. So I get the impression they'd like to take 5 offensive linemen. They'd like one more in the class. Seemingly, it would be one of those two guys. If they miss on both, then they either sit tight with 4, which is still a good-sized offensive line class. And I think particularly headlined by Caleb Holmes is a really good offensive line class. Or they keep an eye on guys to develop as a senior, circle back on a few targets, and see who they can get late in the process. But we should have some idea about those guys, certainly by the end of the summer, and potentially by the end of this week, we'll at least know about one of them. So we'll see kind of what develops there. But overall, with only one commitment, it feels like a quieter official visit weekend. It feels like a weekend that didn't have the fireworks. That, think about what we just talked about. We just spent this whole episode talking about, like, is Pitt going to hold on to its wide receiver commitment? There was another wide receiver who visited, and he committed to Michigan State. There was a kid who decommitted, and a kid who was on an official visit tweeted at him to come to a different school. These are the things we talked about because there was only one commitment that we're still waiting to be announced publicly, even if we have a suspicion about who it is. Previous weekends, they've gotten multiple commitments. There's been a lot more to sort of report on and talk about on Monday morning, but this final visit weekend of the month, a little bit quieter, but not necessarily tremendously less successful. Obviously less successful in terms of immediate commitments, but I think there's a few guys who visited, they still got a pretty decent chance of landing and could bump up that number. Like I said, I made my prediction of 6 4-star recruits in the class of 2024 for Pitt. They've already got 3 in Jasir Winnington, Day Farmer, and Cameron Lindsay. If they could get Sincere Edwards, that would make it 4. And then, if they could pull in Zamarian Lang, who took a visit this weekend, or Ryan Howerton, who took a visit this weekend, or get involved with somebody else late in the process, they've got a good chance to get to 5 or 6, which would, I think 5 would tie the most 4 stars in a class for Pat Narduzzi. 6 would surpass it. So a lot on the table there, a lot of opportunities, and, chance to keep building this into one of Pat Narduzzi's best classes, if not his best class overall. So final official visit weekend, maybe a little bit quiet in terms of commitments, but still, I think a lot of positive momentum with this recruiting class and a lot of things headed in the right direction. Should be an interesting few days. Should be an interesting finish to the month of June. And I'm sure there'll be more things that come out as we get into July. But we're going to keep having these Morning Pitt videos, of course, every day of the week. We've got plenty to talk about this week as we continue to recap and run down recruiting news. Big recruiting announcement coming on Wednesday, a commitment of one of Pitt's top targets. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And like I said, a big commitment announcement coming on Friday, and then some coming up next week or the week after. There are still a lot of guys who took official visits who are out there as not committed yet, but they're going to be announcing soon. And so we'll get some real clarification as these next few weeks unfold, as well as keeping an eye on Pitt basketball and the transfer portal and all those things. We got a lot going on at Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you head over Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. Find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Appreciate you starting the week with us here on the Morning Pitt. Hope you had a great weekend. I hope you have a great Monday to start this week off. We'll be back with you again tomorrow morning for another Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.